So our panel will be on legal relations between basically every stakeholder in the industry. So we're tackling a quite ambitious project here on stage. I would like to start with doing a quick round with our speakers here, who you already have met. I'm not sure, Stefan, have you spoken on this stage already, or? Yes, so everybody knows everybody, fantastic. So we have Daniel Cossi, Romain Sombré, Stéphane Neutin, and Fernando Safra. Welcome to our panel. So the way I would like to start this is that one thing I've noticed is all of you, or most of you, come from different countries, and lots of states have noticed the relevance of esports and tackled it with tailored legislation. So the countries where you're from do governments actually tackle the topic of esports? Let's start with you, Daniel.
Yes.
Yes.
In Brazil, we have a sports law. It's all law, but is dedicated to the athletes. Hello. Dedicated. It's push to talk, really. So it's dedicated to the athletes. And it's quite complicated because you have what we call the CLT, which is your labor identification, and you have specific laws. On the other side, when you are an athlete, you have a lot of other regulations, and they will provide you some things like rights for your image and rights when you are being negotiated between clubs and something like that. So it's quite complicated, but it only works if esports is recognized. And I wrote the esport law, the federal one. It's already approved. So from now on, if the athlete, if the gamer, it's federated, because that's the only way in Brazil. He will be considered a professional, no matter his skills. And this way he's going to, enjoy and have all the rights by the CLT, which is the employer, and also as an athlete.
Okay, but just to understand this correctly, that means that you as a federation have provided some regulation which actually helps the athletes, or is this a governmental law that has...
We have the general one for every employee, no matter the category. But you have also the athlete, for the athlete, a lot of other things. For instance, if you have a team or a sports club, which is completely different in Brazil, and your athletes will benefit from a law called Bolsa Atleta, which is help from the government. They will pay from the grassroots your athlete and his development, all his career. And you can promote and be more active in this way. They will be protected by the sports law as an athlete, but they should go through the federation.
Yeah. Stefan, what challenges have you faced in France in connection to esports, where the government and the politicians felt they have to take action on the regulatory level?
The emergency.
Push to talk, remember? Yeah. Push harder.
Yes. No. Can you hear me? Yes. Wow. Too much. So the French government had some highlights on our activity because of youth protection. It was an emergency for the government. And before making any decision inside the government, they have, perhaps it's the first time, so in the government did something like this, they ask before doing and creating a law, they ask to the ecosystem in France to find the best solution. And we had some law in 2016 about esports, two laws. And one of the law, we talked about it yesterday, is about the players, the protection of the players, because we had no specific contract and we had no recognition on their activity. So the government decided to put us in the easier way for the government was to put us on like sports system, and we had the possibility now. French club can ask for an agreement to the government to get the same contract that you have in sports system, in professional sport. So we have two solutions actually. Services like company services. Most of the players are actually as solution to be independent company and work for the team like a sponsorship relation. And the second way is to be involved like they are employee of the team. You have these two solutions, and actually it's we will talk about this. It's not that easy.
I can imagine. So I will follow up on this later, because I think independent contractor versus employee in a player-team relationship is always quite a challenge to tackle in the compliance department. So what about you, Fernando?
Yeah, well, in Mexico is similar to Brazil. We have two legislations, one for all the employees and one for sports. Within the legislation for employees, we have a special chapter for athletes that give more obligations and rights. And obviously, for us as federation in Mexico, this part was very important, because now, if as esports is recognized as a sport, because CONADE, that is the National Sports Committee in Mexico, gave us the recognition as a sport. These athletes has all the rights, all the obligation in this part of, especially in the labor law. One of these part mentioned transfer fees, obviously the hours to train, that the salary is not the same if it's a male or a woman or man, all the obligations and rights that has an athlete. And also we have the status of the federation that give more rights and more obligations to the athletes. So I think it's very important. This part of the recognition of the esports is one of the most important part in maybe in Mexico. I don't know all the countries, because as well this gives the opportunity to go to the appeal committee and arbitration body in Mexico. That is a special body in Mexico that if you are an athlete, you can go to protect your rights with a special body that knows about sports. So it's very important for the athletes just to protect this right, but not with national courts, with a special body that obviously understand all this sports system.
Looking at the legal landscape and the regulatory landscape, one thing I find very interesting about this is looking at the interests that actually move the needle with the government are usually the same across many countries. So one, you want to protect youth, you want to protect the players, the athletes usually, but also you want to satisfy needs on the very grassroots level. So I know one part of which I found interesting about the French regulation was also that tournament organizers had to have an insurance for prize money, since this was a big issue in the past, that you would participate, let's say, in an amateur tournament, and basically you would get screwed over a lot and not receive any prize money. From a German perspective, for us, I think one of the biggest pushes we experience now is that we would like to see amateur grassroots clubs to be recognized as non-profit clubs, very much like sports clubs, associations. And since we are fighting quite a bit with the representative body of the IOC in Germany about the recognition as sports, it is very unlikely that we will find a regulatory solution that will be based upon a cooperation between the IOC in Germany and the esports body. So it's quite interesting to see that actually lots of politicians pick up esports as a very popular topic, and now there is a serious push to have a dedicated law for esports, so that amateur and grassroots clubs can easier operate. And I personally believe if this comes, it will also help traditional sports clubs just to have an esports division, because currently, if you're having that, you you risk actually your non-profit status, which is of course unacceptable. So going from the regulatory level from a statutory point of view, in more detail, I know we have a couple of representatives here working with teams or being in charge of teams. What do you see as one of the biggest legal challenges between players and clubs? I don't know who wants to start, Stefan, maybe? Or
Perhaps I
Yeah.
will let Romain talk about the club's view.
I can.
Giving you the bomb.
Yeah. No, I think one of the big, comparing with sport, I think one of the big job to do is also to work with the publisher, because if you look at the FIFA system and the sports system, let's say, there is a federation that makes the system work. Means that when you sign a contract with a player, you take some risk. You can sign for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, because you know that it will be declared to a central organization that will protect you in case of transfer, which is totally different in e-sport, except maybe with Riot, but in other sport, if you sign a 3 years contract and the guy wants to leave, and you're not protected as a team. So in terms of investment, you're not going to be able to take risk, etc. So I guess there is a regulation to be put in place with the publisher. It's absolutely mandatory. And after, between the team and the players, I remember at the beginning, I hired the first contract I did was the normal contract from I was the only one in France. So I said, and it's not competitive, let's say. It's difficult to, we are in a competitive landscape that is European landscape. So we compete against Germany, Estonia. When we recruit a player, they have specific relation. In France, we are very expensive in terms of taxes, So if you apply the local market that has been created by the government, you're dead. It means you pay the guy twice the price you should pay. So there is, I think publisher and European regulation maybe would be necessary to improve.
Stefan, how do you see it when looking at the player-team relationship? I mean, you know a bit more about how Riot, for example, governs the system on the secondary level. So how does that work? What does Riot provide as a publisher that actually might help or might, also hinder the relationship between players and teams?
Romain, we need protection of the contract. For the clubs and for the players, it's the same, because if any clubs can do anything and choose any players in professional teams and in amateurs team, it won't help the ecosystem, because you can't build anything. An amateur project from non-profit team as a professional project, you can't build anything if every 2 months you have some move in your team. For clubs, we really need protection. Actually, we don't have a government body to protect us like we had in sports, and the only authority can do that. It's publishers. This is a priority to protect the contract, and this protection is not only for clubs; it's for the players too, because their career are important, and because we have new people now. Oh, lose me. We have new agents now coming in the market, and agents' interests are not players' interest most of the time. And this can be disruptive for the player's career. And we need rules. We need someone to say no, and someone can stop the anarchy, you know. And we have some gentleman agreement between clubs. So we know that we have some clubs playing in the good game on the market, but there is always some specific club we don't like on the market because they don't respect gentleman agreement.
So what's the content of a gentleman agreement? Is it more that you have an exchange with other teams about where players are moving, what the market landscape looks like? Because I know from my experience, leading a club, that sometimes we have to deal with an information asymmetry that is quite big. And as you mentioned, so some agents are great, others are not so great, and you have to deal with a complete market distortion. So, yeah.
The first part of gentleman agreement is it's how to contact players. If you contact directly the players, it means you don't care about his contract, you don't care about anything. So you need to respect the authority of the club, the other organization. So if you want a player, you can contact the club, you can contact the organization. This is the first step, because the exchange must be at the same level before contact the players. And most of the team now play with this gentleman agreement, contact directly the coach and not the players, and ask for availability of the contract. How are you with these players? And can we contact the players or not, actually? We are beginning like this, because if we don't have this respect of the team, it's really difficult, because sometimes your player just leave Mondays on your team and Tuesdays in the other team. And I already had this case, in my team. It's really difficult to maintain balance for your sponsorship, your sponsors.
I agree. So, Fernando, I saw you shaking your head. So, what do you think about these types of arrangements?
The thing is, Stefan gave two very important points. First, agents, and second, this part of negotiation contracts. Agents, well, as you know, in the other sports, this part are regulated. So agents needs to be regulated for publishers or for someone, but it's important to be regulated. And who is an agent in esports? No, it's very important, this part. And about the negotiation, the same. FIFA, and we talk about football a lot of time because at the end is the federation with more regulation in the world, but FIFA has this part of negotiation with players that you can't negotiate a contract with a player that has a contract, and until this, it's a rule, no? So obviously esports is anarchy, has had seven mentioned very good, but we need to check, to study all this kind of situation, and this is why this type of Congress is good, and more if it's regulatory, because it's important to find a solution to regulate all this situation, agents, contracts, transfers. So that's my point of view.
Obviously, the scenarios we're looking at and the one you described, there is always room for legal measure in a scenario like that. If someone comes and actually, poaches your player, this might be tortious interference with the contract you have with your player, or other situations where, as you mentioned, players want to leave. They don't want to be bound by a 3-year contract. recently, one of the biggest cases, I believe, that hit the esports scene was a player named Tifu under contract with FaZe, who claimed in a Californian court that his contract was just disproportionate with regards to a couple of clauses, including preventing him from actually signing with a sponsor who would be potentially in conflict with sponsors of his team. So looking at this landscape and the problems that arise, why is it that we don't see more lawsuits with this actual content? Because, of course, regulation may be one of the solutions, but why is it that, actions that are sometimes clearer and sometimes less clearer against the law are not pursued in court?
Because the own system doesn't exist. It's all based in an economic bubble right now, if you see. It is a broken system from the beginning because it has been done for so long without any, it's in the moment, in the hype. Let me give you an example. You don't see any lawsuits or you see right now international teams in a crisis, economic and financial crisis. But every time you see on the newspaper, esports is a billionaire, it's in your pockets, this billion?
In mine.
It's in your pocket? No. I will kill you, no? It's your,
No.
Where is this billion?
Yeah.
It's coming from the commerce, from the developers and publishers, and they are right. They deserve and they have to make money because they are selling a product. But then you want to put that inside a concept of sports, which it's human beings. It's different. It's completely different. And if you want to have your private event, and developers saw an opportunity to have more money and to create more engagement and lights to his product, because they are always praying for, oh, please God, don't make that guy wake up and don't want to play my game because I need it. Of course, it's your product. But on the other side, it's not a sport. It's not something you are doing on a daily basis, just business. So it's based in a broken model. And now we are trying to find our place and in a place that fits us better. I completely and totally support the private events from the publishers. They need to do that. They have to do that. This is a wonderful show. On the other side, you have the institutional side that puts you inside the sports scene. And it's completely different. And then you have the mix, all the mixed information. But the Olympic movement is one thing. The Olympic Games is another thing. Olympics is another thing. Then you have the sports and the commerce. So that's why it is a broken business model, the way it's been doing.
Coming back to the legal question, though, you mentioned that your player, would want to leave. So why don't you just sue him or make clear to him, look, if you don't keep your obligations in the contract, what happens is...
I just can imagine the day my team want to pursue by law players want to leave and in front of the lawyer, in front of people.
Oh my God.
Okay, he don't want to play game for you and you want to force him to play game for you. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I can imagine the situation. I'm not sure. I know the French law. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
No, but
I need some power.
The problem is you.
I have to push
Technology.
it.
Push it.
No, it's
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. I lose my point. Where I am.
No, if you want to pursue...
Yes, if you
why
want
you
to
don't
pursue, I
pursue
can
legal
imagine.
action? Yes.
In French, under the French law, the protection is always to people, not to company. We want to protect first the people. And in a new case like this, I think I will lose.
Of
Every
course.
time I will lose.
And there is a big risk. I remember meeting with an investor, and first thing is, can you send me the contract you have with the player? I received the contract. He said, okay, I cannot invest on your company because there is a big risk. If we qualify this contract as real contract, you will be punished by the law. So we are in a weak situation compared with the player. If they want to leave, they leave, to be honest.
It's too easy to break a contract, because even we have contract. We know that the French law actually it's not doesn't cover all the contracts, and we all know, all club knows that we have contract. It's just to explain what's the relation between the two the players and the team. It's not ready to protect. We try to put something to protect the players and to protect the club, but because we don't have a body to help to keep the respect of the contract. There's no sense when the player wants to leave. It's easy for him. And second thing, most of the team have no players, no backup. So it means if the players leave, my team just fall. We have no solution. Most of the team are like this because it's too expensive actually to get some backup players. And we are working on this on economic model. We need to build a backup to be sure that if the players don't do its job or don't play in a good way, we can say, okay, you are the backup now, and I put the new players. We need, like sports, some power, on the players. And actually, in esports, it depends in League of Legends we have some power, but for Counter-Strike, it's not the same. Players have a lot of power, more than clubs, more than organization.
Fortnite also.
Fortnite also is the same. Influencers have the power, and has the power, and an influencer has the power, and the club is totally screw up, when you have to fight about a contract because you have no protection actually.
Yeah, I think you're making an interesting point that, you say players have all the power, even in highly regulated circumstances. We saw examples with football players, for example, in Germany, a player called Lewandowski who basically went on strike with his team. He's quite famous because he wanted to force a transfer to another club. And of course, you can imagine that in this multi-million euro business, the club was not amused about that. But as you say, when it comes to performance, you can't force your player actually to perform, because if they don't want to, they simply say, okay, I can't do anything about it. One thing I wish, though, is if we had someone sit here who represents players, or even, who was a player. Fernando, maybe you, what would he say? What are the issues players are facing when dealing with a club? Because while I completely empathize, with what you just explained, also in my experience, there are a couple of issues related to players in not only on the amateur level, but also on the professional level, where it's really hard to deal with issues such as, for example, unpaid salaries. This is certainly something that has happened quite a bit in our industry.
Well, one of the first things that we see in FEMES was about the contracts. That these contracts player with club, some contracts are image right, some contracts are employee, some contracts are services. So depending the club is the contract. And for this, one player can do more or less, depending the contract. So for us, for the Mexican Federation, the keyword was professionalization of the esports. So we give the opportunity to all the affiliates. In this moment, are more than 4,000 to receive legal advice and say okay, you're a player. Give me your contract, I will check. I will give you a legal advice. And I will tell you if it's the best option for you or not. And also, if you can or how can you do for breach a contract if you want, obviously, but it's like a legal advice. But it's
Could you give examples? Like, what would be the core issues that would be arising from looking at these contracts?
Well, exactly, I can tell you a lot because it's a part of confidentiality.
Yeah.
But, for example, a player wanted to be transferred to other club, and the contract established a penalization and indemnity, and was like, at the end, you don't have to pay this because the contract didn't give this obligation as you as a player to have to pay this. So, it's case by case.
Yeah.
It's like in every sport, it's case by case. And it's different to explain. You have to see the contract and say, okay, do this, don't do this. But it's case by case. In my case, it's case by case.
So would you actually advise players, for example, to seek more legal help in the space to position themselves better, also in terms of planning their career? Is this something that you've discovered, that in esports players are likely to work with third parties, or are they usually on their own?
Well, that depends now. But for me, I think it's dependent what the gamer wants. So, because also depends the e-sport.
Yeah, of course.
If I want to play League of Legends, for example, depends. So, I think the best option is a legal advice with a e-sports lawyer.
Yeah.
So,
But
sorry.
yeah, I think it's you're right. It's the best option. But yesterday we had a panel with a pro player from SK Gaming, Hearthstone, yeah, and he said, "I feel like a fish in front of a shark."
Yes.
The relation with the team, and we didn't discuss after that, but.
Yeah,
My
I'm
point
gonna
of view
call
is that
Alex
I
about
feel
this.
I feel like a fish in front of shark when I talk with the players sometimes,
Yes.
because I'm gonna give you a clear example in a team of Stefan. He had a very good player on Fortnite. The guy qualified for the World Cup, and then he said, "I want to change." So you invest on the player. You pay him, you pay him, you pay him, and when he wins, he said, "I want to leave to the other team," and you cannot do anything. You have to let him living with nothing. So you said you don't have to pay, no, and I don't agree. As a team, we are weak in front of the player very often. No? Do you confirm? And
Now you got what I told?
sorry?
Now you got what I told in the beginning.
Yeah.
It was all about that.
Yeah,
I was
that's
trying
it.
to say that.
Yeah, you're right. It's not in our pocket.
Yeah,
let's say.
yeah.
So-
But I can take the cap of the players because I'm schizophrenic and because I'm president of federation. We have a body, players' body, and there is, of course, players' view. They need protection, but sometimes they want to manage their career, and so they want a short contract. They don't want a long contract. They don't want engagement with club because they want to be free agent every year to be sure they can move and negotiate a new contract. And it's difficult for clubs because we want to engage more time on the players. And most of the time, this is the player said, no, I prefer a short contract and I prefer to build my career year to year. And it's difficult for us because even you want to engage 2-3 years that protect him and let him build something around his career. Most of the time they don't want because they prefer to be free agent and to be the actor of their career.
And the level of advice they have very often is very weak. It's a friend of a friend. That is, you talk with agents that have no competencies, neither legal or commercial or marketing. So it's not easy. They don't understand that if you are a serious team, you want to create a career path and you want to train them and etc. They said, okay, I don't care. Give me the money. I say, wow.
I mean, look, obviously,
mature.
what I'm hearing, there are lots of factual problems between players, teams, maybe even publishers. So when you're looking for legal solutions that go beyond the current landscape, and I may say from a rogue perspective, for example, for us, reasons why we wouldn't take action or why certain situations pan out the way they do is because we don't have the time, for example, to go to court. We need quick solutions for quite complex matters, or just commercially it will not make sense. However, you will have to live with an injustice that you have to cover on the commercial end then. So looking for solutions that might work better in that regard, who would you look at for a regulatory solution? Would it be rather a game publisher? Would it be a tournament organizer? Would it be the national states regulating the landscape? So I think it would be helpful, one, to learn what are the three main issues and who would you look at to resolve them in the future?
It's up to you.
Yeah. From what I saw, I think the publisher, Riot example, a very good example. Within 1 year, the difference in the French market has been, they have improved a lot the situation because now we have a clear regulation, contracts are declared, etc. So the publisher in this case can be the one, the referee saying, okay, because if the player wants to leave my team, but Riot is able to say, okay, if there is no agreement between his team and my team, you won't be able to play in this new team. Wonderful. Then it's a negotiation between the club, and we have to discuss, no problem. So if for Riot, for League of Legends, Riot. For Counter-Strike, it's not Valve, because Valve is not managing. It's maybe organizer, but organizer is ESL, DreamHack, so I think there is no way to, yeah. And Fortnite, let's forget about Fortnite. Don't talk about regulation right now.
That's good to hear that, because that's where the federations, or whatever you want to name it, their role is exactly that. If the developer don't want to do that for himself, okay, so you have to follow this, I don't know, these steps, these guidelines, and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
I think one should work with the other, and this kind of gap.
We talk about clubs issue, but let's talk about players issue. One issue of the players is I'm playing for a club and for an organization, and my organization don't want to pay me. It's not so rare. It exists, you know. And what can I do at this time? I need to find a lawyer. Okay, I will fight against this club. But if I do this, which club after this will gonna engage me?
A gentleman agreement.
That's why the players are not in a good position to fight either. It's not that easy for the players too. So we need clarity on contracts. We need to be sure that we have to respect Mercato and everything that, like the publisher can explain to the team. Okay, you didn't pay for your players. You can't be part of the league, or it's finished. You can't. We need control for the players, but we need control for the team too. And actually, I think publishers are the most valuable body to do this.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the power of the publishers is, I think, the worst problem that we have in esports, because they want to keep this power and they want to control esports, and sometimes they don't know how to control, or they don't want to listen how to control. To clubs, for example, or athletes. This club is not paying me. I don't care.
But maybe it's even, not the right, rights holder to look at. So if I may just, present the view we have in the LEC, which I think is a great example of an evolved regulatory system on the very top level, but also then looking at a secondary level where you have a semi-amateur system, and where now we will face new regulation actually that will protect even, the clubs better, even against, clubs from the very top level. Looking at this regulation, obviously Riot did this because they made the decision very early on that they want to control their ecosystem. But even then, I can say from my experience, having worked with them over many years, is that the implementation of legal solutions has always taken years and years. We're not talking about immediate solutions within a year or two. For example, looking at the controversy between should players be independent can they be independent contractors, or should they be employees? It took a huge controversy between teams and actually Riot to implement a rule that everybody should treat their players as employees. Why? Just because, as in many other nascent industries, you have a distortion of the market when some teams can have their players as independent contractors, and they will save probably double the amount of money than other clubs would who employ them as employees, while they have more legal certainty then, of course. But in the end, it's quite a complex topic. But looking at other ecosystems, many publishers might not have the interest to regulate the space or even face the legal implications of that, just because it's very risky and costly to regulate a global esports. Riot does it. They have an incredibly huge committee where people come together and talk about topics, for example, such as drug testing. And I don't expect any solution soon, because looking at the different jurisdictions, you will not get a unified answer what you should be testing for example. So, of course, the issues we are facing in esports from a regulatory point of view are very similar to sports, and the solutions are never easy, but very complex. Still, I think an interesting point you touched on earlier, Daniel, I think, was looking at federations and what they can do. This probably does only work if you convince all the publishers to become members of a federation too. Do you think in the future publishers would be willing to become members in federations and take a more active role, a more collaborative role in working on regulations?
I mean, on Wesco, on Wesco, we are a consortium. So we accept hotels, food suppliers, and also developers, just the way we already have, right? I'm not selling the trend, just giving an example. So, but that's one thing, because it is global, international. It's open to everybody, and it's not trying to regulate. We are not saying we are the governing of that or that. We are just here. We are creating standards, and that's it, right? It's just like United States. You have a constitution, and then you have the regulations for each one of the states. But on the other hand, in Brazil, if you have a confederation or a federation, it's only meant to teams and athletes, and not private companies. It doesn't exist. But of course, they will participate 100% in the ecosystem. How? Being members of commissions, creating public policies together with us, so you can move one step forward to the regulation. That's how you build a democratic thing. That's one of the things. So the partnership should be always there, always on the table. On the other hand, you have the problems with the other countries, like Mexico is almost exactly like Brazil. France is completely different, but it's over there, the pyramidal system on sports. And most of the time, you want the bonus, but you want the onus. If you want to have a team, you have to pay for that. You have to have your legal stuff all ready, and you will pay a lot for that, right? Stefan, don't cry. But if you want to be an athlete, you have the rights, but you have also the onus to fulfill a specific contract. That's why you need regulation. So it's a tough thing. Everybody wants the prize, but don't want to pay for them.
Yeah, of course. I'm not sure. I think you had kind of experience in France, the publisher all together to create a federation. Wow.
Good luck.
Yeah, what's your experience with
But,
publishers?
I think in the future, I just see that the only way if the publishers don't get involved in this authority, we will need gentleman agreement, but with player syndicate and team syndicate, club syndicate, and after we will have this body talking and protecting their own member in the future. And I think in France we will have this soon because we will need it. And the first time we will have a real fight between a club and between players. We will have some other players come to help the players and other clubs perhaps help the club or not, but at this moment we will need together. And I think we will understand that if we don't have regulation, we need to build auto-regulation. We need to regulate by ourselves the system. And perhaps the key is to create syndicates, and this syndicate will discuss together. But I think it's not a good idea for the publishers, because these syndicates will get more and more present on the ecosystem. After, they will have to discuss every time with this syndicate. They will have to fight about a lot of different subjects. That's why I want to convince publishers to come inside and become the authority, because it's not a good thing for them, you know, to let the ecosystem to find a way by itself.
Well, for me, it's the ideal have a federation and all the publishers. But imagine a new publisher appears and say like, okay, I want this sport, and it's outside of the federation. How you can control all of this is different. I can organize competitions, and how you can control this? You can't. So, yeah, it's an ideal, have a federation. Obviously, it's the ideal. Why? Because with this federation, you can control, you can regulate. Yes, but how can you obligate the publishers to be there?
Well, states can, for example, ask them to be part of federations, and I think this is one concern many publishers have, and this is why they lobby in many countries. Actually, in Europe, it's a very hot topic to remain in a strong position based upon their intellectual property rights, so they can stay in charge of the entire vertical of their intellectual property, because, as I said yesterday in my presentation, in Germany we have quite a strong lobby direction that goes into the direction to understand games as a common cultural good, and that entirely would change the discussion. And of course, on the other hand, it would also, for example, disincentivize, in my opinion, a game publisher to invest in an ecosystem in certain countries, just because the loss of control would also pose a huge commercial risk. Maybe coming back to a more detailed question, because I think this is one of the hot topics we're going to face in the years to come, and that's also a hot topic for us at Rogue, is how we actually treat agents coming into the space. Of course, the space is open to all kinds of gold diggers, apologies, but what, in your opinion, makes a good agent in esports, and how can we help with regulation for those good, helpful agents to succeed in the system?
Yeah. What is a good agent in sports? Because I know a little bit more this part.
Come on.
It's difficult to say. Of course, the guy needs to know the ecosystem, he needs to know the constraint of the club and the constraint of the player, because if he wants to be in a position, he has to discuss with the club, he needs to understand what are our things, our concern, etc. Right now, as I told you, it's really not the case. People are saying I'm an agent, I'm an e-sport agent because they have been looking at a League of Legends game the week before. Don't feel they also have to have a legal mindset to know a little bit about legal things, etc., etc. But I'm not sure. You think agent will be coming this year, because there is not a lot of money in terms of transfer right now, so I'm not sure that they can be interested.
I can tell you, for example, on the LEC level,
it's coming.
most of the players
okay.
are represented by agents. Some of them are great, some of them are not so
Awful.
great. And just because, so some issues we would face, and I think they're very similar to what you would see in sports, is some are very reasonable. They know the market. They give good advice to their player in terms of player career development, and you can have a reasonable conversation touching on many contractual issues, such as image rights, of course, compensation, but also flexibility when it comes to performance, because this is, also a huge issue for both parts, because all I can say is when you are part of a system where all your players are employees, and that's the case for us, and you have agreed on a certain salary, very similar to football, if your player starts underperforming, you are still obligated to pay this amount of money, showing from a civil law perspective that your player, does not fulfill the contract at all anymore, which would allow, for an amendment. That is almost impossible from a legal perspective. So then you sit, for example, on a 3-year contract, very much like in football, and the only solution from a legal perspective is to go and renegotiate and agree on a quite hefty severance fee usually, and you part ways. But coming back to the agents, I think some of the issues we discover is, for example, that agents do not ask for fees that are within the legal, limits. So in Germany, for example, as an agent, what you're doing is employment procurement, and that is highly regulated, of course. So you might not ask for more than 14%, I think it is currently, on the first year of a contract. Well, agents in esports, they usually ask for, as you said, sometimes the contract value is not very high. So they will ask for 20% for 3 years. And of course, the player is not obligated to pay it, but because everybody is so uneducated, they get taken advantage of. And for example, I believe it would be good to have a regulation that tackles this type of abusive behavior that's clearly against the law. But of course, this is a very top layer, and this is where agents believe they can make money. When we look at an amateur or a grassroots level, this might be, one, not attractive, and if it is attractive, maybe for agents who know even less about the landscape. What do you think, Stefan?
I think like you that players need agents. Clubs don't like agent, but player needs agent, but not really agent. First, they need legal counsel. It's really important. I can talk about a lot of players sign my contract in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I said no. Take the contract, go back home, and you come back to the contract with the contract. In few days, you need to read it to be sure if anything is wrong. Tell me if you need, go see a lawyer. You have to be sure everything is good for you. And if you don't understand something, you need a lawyer. And every time we explain the contract to the player, we take time. But you can't imagine. I'm confident. Every time they're seen like this, because they know we are good actor in the team. But because of this, I think I raise all my players, and in the way that the clubs always give a good contract. And I know that a lot of my best old players had issue with their contract with other team, because they had they understood that my first club was good one, so every club are good, and they signed a contract. If they didn't just read it Okay, I think I have to, yes. The salary, okay, it's enough. And they didn't read all the clauses. There is some part of the contract. When I read the contract after, they came back, when they have the issue, they came back to us, not to a lawyer. We are the first the first organization. We helped them to come into the market, and they came back with the contract, and we said, why did you sign this? Look at this, and I explained the sentences. Wow, I didn't know this. They need lawyer. So that's why an agent need to be a lawyer. In France, we have in sport regulation, to be agent, you need an agreement from your federation. But of course, we are not a real federation actually, like in sports. So we can't give an agreement to an agent, and there is a lot of process to create this agreement. So when an agent come to me at the national level, every time I kick him, okay, bye. You're not a lawyer. In France, if you want to represent someone and negotiate a contract, you need to pay a lawyer. That's all. You can be a consul, for your friend. I said you can be a consul for your friend, but I need to talk with your friend. You can't be a legal representative. You are not his parents. He's not minor. You're just a friend. So just show me your certificate, your
Power of
everything,
attorney,
your graduation, lawyer graduation. I want to see. And every time they go away. But now we have new agent with lawyer. They are. It's not the same, So they read the contract and they protect the players. I understand this because I saw some bad move, and bad action from some clubs, and we need to protect, of course, the players. And as I told you earlier, if you go to a fight with the law, you will lose because the protection will go to the player. And I think the players don't know this because most of the time I explain to the player, you can break the contract. The contract is easy to break it with the French law, but they don't understand the contract, so they have no formation. They need to be, and I think it's part of the formation you want to create with the federation. The almost federation. We need to help them to understand and to read a contract before coming in the professional market. This is part of our job, to explain them what they have to do. And if they can't read a contract, they have to ask to a lawyer. That's all. And I'm a club, I prefer this than to see some agent coming from nowhere and asking for more money with no vision, no understanding of the contract, no understanding of the career. And sometimes they just choose more money and just send the players to a wall.
Surely that's an issue. Looking at the relationship between clubs and players, and I think we've talked quite a bit now about it, some I would say very interesting developments in that department when it comes to representing player interests are the forming of, unions, or at least in bodies that represent player interests. So we've seen, for example, emerging a player union for Counter-Strike players, which I thought was quite interesting and a remarkable.
The players president of this union is from our team.
Oh, congratulations!
We talked a lot before. I told you we form. Or we teach them how to read a contract. It's Nathan Schmidt is the
NBK. Okay, yes. So what's the feedback on this body? Do you think it's a positive contribution? Would you rather see player interests represented on a national level, or is it a better fit for esports to have player interests represented on a global level, just because of the tournament structure and how these players actually participate in the ecosystems?
Well, talking about Mexico, a labor union should be for all the gamers, maybe. It's complicated. Imagine a labor union for Counter-Strike, a labor union, so it's very complicated. If it's complicated, and was complicated create the football players union in Mexico. Imagine an esport union or just a video game esport union. But I think for athletes it's good. They can negotiate collective bargains. They can strike. So, in my point of view, labor unions are good for the athlete, obviously. They can negotiate, they can, but again, clubs are in this part of, they're weak again. So it's athletes. We think in athletes, and sometimes we need to think also in the clubs. But for me, it's a positive point. Labor union is always a positive.
How do you see it? Do you think it's a good move?
I
What
think,
does
I
NBK
think it's a
say
good move,
about
but the union need to work for the players. I mean, for all the players and not only for the professional players. Because if they are working only for the top and fight for contract and some, sometimes they can discuss with publishers about some special fee in the competition, but they don't talk about little players coming in enter the market. They don't talk about the contract. They don't talk about the relation between the players and the organization at the low level. They're always talking about what touch the top of the players.
Why do you think that is?
I would like that these players, when I think it's just because of the maturity. We need more players, retired players, and these players will have more time, not to focus on their career, but to focus on the ecosystem because they would like to do it, And actually, I think it's too early to get this, and I hope we'll have some players, if there is some here, want to get inside this body and not fight only for the top players, but fight for all the players.
To close up the round, or would you like to?
No.
Sorry. I would like to ask everybody here in this round to give me the one top legal issue you see, and it doesn't matter whether you see it on a publisher's level or you see it, somewhere else in the industry, the top one legal issue that you would like to see fixed within a year from now, and by whom you would like to see it fixed.
Please.
No, be my guest.
Quickly, if I just give
many.
one, okay, I need to give
Yeah.
one. I would say the contract with the player. It's the most important for me to have a kind of security, because if not, I cannot attract investor. I think it's blocking kind of a market. And I think the publisher is in charge of putting in place the right. No, but she asked about who.
Yeah.
One major topic. That's it. But I want to be optimistic a little bit because a lot of things happen in 1 year. I just started 1 year ago, and the LFL creation, LEC, all the contracts are going, for example, on League of Legends. If you look at soccer, it took maybe 50 years.
Yeah.
So within 50 years, I'm sure eSport will have the solution. I won't be there anymore, but I'm sure.
It's almost the same. If the publisher just want to focus on the top level, like they do actually, they need to give the key to someone, and they have to give the key to someone, and perhaps it's federation, national federation. But if they don't, one day government of the country will do it. We saw this in Korea already with KESPA. The power of IP was given to a government body, of a body dependent of the government. And I think no publishers want to see this again, don't want to live this again. The example between KESPA and Blizzard is really complicated. And that's why, in France esports, publishers was previously involved in the government, in the body. Because if they don't, it means something about regulation can come without their view, and it's really dangerous for them, and they can lose some power. So they just have to find the constraints, give some key and say, okay, we leave you this power, and you can regulate this because we can't. So do it. But we need just an agreement between the publishers and the national body. And I think this is the key. This agreement is the key to develop the grassroots and to be sure that you can understand where you can go when you want to put your son somewhere to become a pro player. Where I have to put my son? Who is where is the way? And we need this agreement between the national body and the publishers.
Fantastic.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
It's a
Anything
dream.
to add,
It's a
or
dream.
shall we leave it there?
I agree
Because
with-
this is a
with him
great
100%,
vision.
Because if you have a stability and a good legal environment, you attract more investors. They will be, feeling okay to invest and sponsor his team because he is very secure with the athletes. And his model is clever, intelligent. Come on, you're hiding the gold.
We are working with publishers on it.
France
but
is working on their leading,
that's wonderful.
regulatory position in the space. Fernando, what is the top legal issue that needs to be resolved and by whom?
For me, also the contract of the player, and maybe specific the contract of player minor player. So
Yeah.
this is a really important topic. That the minors always, if a